Welcome to the Bias Buzz. I'm Don Irvine. He's Brian McNichol.
Good morning.
Okay, so we're going to spend, we'll do the little trending topics in because that'll be quick, just for the heck of it. National Drink Beer Day. Now, here's my comment about these things. How many days do we need to be told about what to do or what we should be doing? And is this a bad thing to inspire more drinking? I don't drink, so this doesn't bother me, but it's like drinking beer, eating ice cream, having a hot dog. I mean, sometimes I think we have like 3 or 4 of these on some days.
And, you know, it's their industry done and whatever. But beer is an interesting one. It's the first towns ever made in the history of the world were made to organize the making of beer. You had the guy with the water, the guy who could mill the grain, the guy who grew the grain, and so forth. And the first time we organized ourselves as a society to do anything, it was to drink beer. So, believe it or not. So, you know, it's an interesting one anyway.
All right. Well, I wasn't expecting that. To get to a couple more somber notes, we had the passing away this week, the shocking death of Jose Fernandez from the Miami Marlins. Is it Miami or is it Florida Marlins?
Miami.
It's Miami now. Yeah, I keep switching these things on. I can't remember what's what. And then Arnold Palmer, the golf legend. Thoughts? I mean, you're the big sports aficionado.
Arnold Palmer, one of the great pitchmen in the history of pitchmen, sports or no, until about 5 or 6 years ago, was still the leading pitchman, ahead of Michael Jordan, ahead of Tiger Woods, because he spanned generations. He was a genial father figure kind of guy. No one had a bad word to say about him. It was incredible. As for Jose Fernandez, I think that Marlins have done an excellent job marking this. Obviously a huge tragedy, a terrific pitcher. Absolutely terrific.
And one with a chance to even win the Cy Young potentially. I mean, his record, he had performed that well, that would probably set a historical standard. I don't know that there's been a pitcher that's been awarded that posthumously, I guess, right?
That's right.
So, and then, back to Palmer. I mean, Palmer goes back, I have just vague memories of Palmer as a child. He really was more of, his heyday was really more the 60s. I was still fairly young back then, but as a pitchman, he was unparalleled. And even on the day that they announced his death, I get a piece of mail, direct mail from the Eisenhower Foundation with his name on it.
Right.
So, I mean, he was being used in multiple ways, but I mean, I think he just had this. There's no stain on him, and then even had a drink named after him.
That's right. And a non-alcoholic.
A non-alcoholic drink. Yeah. So it's.
One of my friends told me that he was a volunteer for a tournament, and one of his jobs was to take a case of Michelob to Arnold Palmer's room every day. I don't know what he did with it. Maybe handed it out to his friends.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Okay. All right, so now we're down to about 41 days before the election. We had the first presidential debate. So let's talk about winners, losers. Let's start with your thoughts about this.
Trump, speaking of baseball, so many weak fastballs lobbed down the middle of the plate and not crushed out of the park. I don't think she made any points on him, but he failed to make, we've talked about this before too. There are some skills specific to being a politician that he does not have because he's not a politician. And so like when she says, Trump Foundation, you say Clinton Foundation. She says, ask about cyber, you say Clinton emails. Every time, Pavlovian response. And he didn't do it, missed the mark. I kept waiting on him. Oh, there's one. He won't miss that one. And there was like 5 or 6, if you read through the accounts of it, where just easy, right down Main Street things that he didn't take advantage of. Now I'm wondering, it's almost, since he missed on so many, that I'm almost wondering if it wasn't a miss, if he purposely stayed off of those things for some reason, like plans to do it later debate, understands the people, the value of Trump. The thing that's put Trump where he is that he has decided to argue these cases in a different way, right? No one's ever campaigned as he campaigns. No one's ever, tried to win the White House like this. It's, coming from the business world to this extent. As for who won, all the snap polls except one, which was, and the one was only 26% Republican, was the CNN poll. All the other snap polls he won. You know, you call in or you log on and say who you think won. Okay, now that's totally unscientific. I get that. But if all of them had gone to Hillary, we'd be hearing a lot more about that, right? What a wonderful thing it is. And what does it say? Enthusiasm for the candidate. You know, it's like in the day afterwards, like yesterday, so she went to North Carolina and had a rally, 1,400 people in a room for 6,000. He went to Melbourne, Florida, 18,000 people, 14,000 more outside. You know, I mean, it may not win because, I mean, they said all this stuff about Romney at the end. He was having these huge rallies. But, you know, right now, all the enthusiasm is behind him.
Yeah, you know, it's been kind of interesting because you see those snap polls that you mentioned, but if you're watching television, if you're reading the news, it's Trump lost. I mean, or at least it was a draw. And so the liberal media, the mainstream media, has a completely different opinion. When they covered Hillary's campaign stop there that you just mentioned, it was basically she's taking a victory lap. So, you know, it's not she's feeling really good, really great about how her performance was and everything like that. And though I do tend to agree that, you know, that maybe Trump started off better and finishes good, you know, and Hillary was relatively steady throughout. Not that I like it. She didn't. Neither candidate really did anything in my mind to help or hurt themselves. You know, no one delivered the knockout punch. So, you know, we are going to look at another debate coming up, and Trump. You know, you alluded to this. I mean, Trump is talking about, well, he'll be much tougher. You know, Trump is so funny because he says, well, you know, he wasn't going to go into certain things because Chelsea was there. I don't know. I mean, you know, then it's the whole thing about the you know, I had a defective mic and things like that. So Trump just creates this whole different image, and you're never quite sure where it's going. I mean, it was somewhat entertaining. But I don't know that I got a whole lot out of it. But we'll talk about some of the issues that were talked about too, and see how we break those down as well. And then Lester Holt.
Yeah, and another interesting thing I thought was, if you think about who, you know, what was the source of the information both gave, right? Hers was the inside the Beltway consensus on how to handle policy area A, B, C, D. His was, I talked to people in Michigan. I talked to people in Arizona. I talked to business owners. I talked to small business owners, right? He knew what division of Ford was moving to Mexico. I bet she doesn't. I bet she was lucky that she didn't get asked. Well, what part of Ford is leaving? Because, I mean, he's following the business press, right? And he's following the trends, like who makes money and how they do and who fails and why they fail. And that's, you know, that is really a, you know, down to the earth issue that she doesn't touch. Her source of information is, you know, the same people who've been giving us policy recommendations for 50 years that got us into this mess. And like we were talking, you know, David Ignatius has a piece out today. He said he watched the debate in Argentina. He's down there with Treasury Secretary Liu and the university group, and they watched the debate with these guys. And he said, you know, he thought the biggest line of the debate was when she assured that American foreign policy would continue as it is under her administration. That, to me, should be a Trump campaign commercial. 4 more years of this? 4 more years of allowing ISIS to grow and Putin to take whatever he wants and, you know, passively sit by while North Korea and Iran and others develop nuclear capability. You know, we want more of that? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, that it's interesting. I mean, let me ask you this question, though, too. You know, in terms of preparation, it's obvious that Hillary spent a lot of time preparing, which is very traditional that they kind of go into almost a bunker mentality, just
right.
Go down there and just hunker down and go through all these scenarios and do this. You know, it was said that Trump, you know, he basically eschewed that whole thing. He was just going to kind of go his Trumpian style and do that. Do you think that was a plus for Hillary and a negative for Trump, or do you?
I think that it, as I said, it prevented him from scoring some points he totally could have scored. I think the next time he will. I think that, I can see Kellyanne, Roger Ailes, and the other people in the background for him saying, we're not going to wing it next time. We're going to be down fact for fact with her. And it won't be what she does. It won't be voluminous briefing books. It will be practiced responses. Like I said, they say cyber, you say emails. They say Trump Foundation, you say Clinton Foundation. Every time, Pavlovian. And he doesn't have that discipline now, and I think that's one thing that you will see in the next one.
Okay, now what's your feeling about Lester Holt's performance? I gave a quote to Laura Ingram's Live Zet, and I said I was giving him a generous C. I was optimistic, and I really was optimistic because I guess that had come out that he was apparently a registered Republican, though that could mean a lot of different things. But I wonder whether or not was it an inherent liberal bias by Holt, the way he approached that and the questions that he asked, or is there also that overhang from the whole Matt Lauer interview with Hillary and all the blowback he got that Holt didn't want that to happen?
The whole purpose of the way they treated Matt Lauer was to send a message to Lester Holt. It wasn't for our benefit. It was for Lester Holt's benefit, and he got the message. He asked Trump 15 questions. He asked her 2. He has 11 follow-up questions of Trump, none of her. So he never tried to pin her down on anything. Spent the whole night trying to pin Trump down. Okay, he did what if you put a Democratic Party operative in that chair, you'd have gotten roughly the same thing. So, but that going in, right? You agreed to him. Now you've agreed to Anderson Cooper and Martha Raddatz, right? And then Chris Wallace, who likes to show his bipartisan bona fides at all the wrong moments. So, I mean, he agreed to this thicket. I don't know, I don't want to fault him too much on it because I don't know who they could have said that she would have agreed to, right? That would have at least tried to be fair. The problem with this is nobody's fair, right? So, we're arguing about this. There was a story yesterday that she had the questions in advance. And then people come in, well, that's a false newspaper, the Baltimore Herald or whatever. And it was like an online thing. And I guess it's not there anymore. It's not as prevalent as it was or whatever. So it's a hoax. They're partisan. I'm like, the Washington Post is no more objective about covering this than the Baltimore Herald, whatever it is. They're no more credible on this election than the Baltimore Herald.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Well, let's talk a little bit just about some of the answers or some of the things that we're talking about. One of the things here was that when they got into discussion about income taxes and things like that, and Hillary made this remark about Trump not having paid any income tax, and obviously we don't really know. I do have a little bit of a problem with Trump kind of going all over the board on the tax return thing. It's like I thought it was a great line when he said that he would release them when they find those 33,000 deleted emails, that type of thing. I thought that was great. But then, he was also covering himself about the audit feature. So it was almost like he was playing both sides. And then about the paying the tax, and he comes in there and says, I call that being smart. I'm not sure that particular comment helped him. I don't know how many people are paying attention to it, but I'm just like, I don't know that a lot of people would find that as being smart, per se, if you're trying to reach to the everyday guy.
Right. I think the thing to do for him out of that is, first of all, I think the strongest moment of the debate for him was when he said, I want to lower taxes, you want to raise taxes. That's as clear as it can get. She cannot deny it. It's absolutely what she's for. As for his taxes, I think it ought to be that what ought to follow that is, I took advantage of the tax code. It says I can do these things. Now what they never tell you is what got him those tax breaks. Like GE, right, was cited. They didn't pay any taxes. Okay, the head of GE is one of Obama's best friends, right, Jeffrey Immelt. Okay, so it's not like he's hating on Obama, right? How do they not pay taxes? Well, they greened all their buildings. And they got so many tax breaks for greening every building GE owns all around the world that they didn't have to pay any taxes. So liberals, are you against getting tax breaks for greening buildings? Because that's what they did. So what Trump should do is say, hey, yeah, I didn't pay any taxes on an enormous income, but I use the law. Now, the thing is to get the special interest out of the tax code, and, we'll simplify the tax code, and yeah, I'll have to pay taxes, and I'm good with that because it will be fair.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And it's kind of the false narrative or whatever you want to call it on this. It's just that Trump did not do anything wrong. He is just taking advantage of the laws that are in place. So I would say that, yeah, what this does say is that this calls for a simplification of the tax code.
Right.
And that creates these, if you want to call these inequities or whatever, but that's what it is. I mean, when you or I when we fill out our tax returns, there's all kinds of things. There's the mortgage deduction and all of these things, and my mind is like, well, okay, if I give this much money to charity, I'll be able to take some of that off. Now the charities, they'll get full use of my money. I'll get a partial tax write-off, but I'll be doing good by doing this. But I'll be lowering my tax burden, sending less to the federal government, which is always my goal, is to send as little money to the federal government as I can. So because we know how they spend it, and they don't spend it wisely.
And he did make that point.
Yeah, right. And then Hillary's point too. When she talked about his debt and this, what he owes to Wall Street. I don't know how that sits with middle America per se, but I do think that a lot of people understand that businesses have to take on debt, and that's how they create business. That's how they create jobs. Right. He can't go in there to the old post office building and turn that into a hotel without lining up financing and doing this. Right, yeah. Right. He has to have that. Now he'll eventually, hopefully, be able to pay all that back once the hotel operates and starts making money. But that's how we're built. Right. So just like she's trying to do this Wall Street thing, of course, which I always find is hypocrisy from the woman who's accepted all this money from Wall Street to begin with. Right. I don't know. It was just. Yeah. That's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, two things that should have been brought up there. One is, Hillary, what have you ever built? Yeah, I just built a big hotel in Washington, D.C. I have properties all over the world. What have you ever done that gave anybody a job? Nothing, right? You've helped a few law firms, right? Obviously, you've kept some FBI agents on the payroll and so forth. The other thing about the taxes is he's not. It's sort of a big so what. Everybody understands this, and he doesn't. That's another one where the Clinton Foundation, they pay them no salaries, because salaries she would have to pay taxes on, but her, Bill, and Hillary and Chelsea got $53 million in travel expenses over 3 years. So that's $17 million each, $6 million each a year in travel expenses. If you give me $6 million a year in travel expenses, I don't need a salary, right? I could just stay in the hotel, right?
That's right.
So, but those are kind of things that has to come to your mind when they're talking about this, and you've got to spit that out. You're not going to get another chance. He'll never get, I cited the stats on the questions Lester Holt asked, but he's never going to get that cyber question. That's a softball in the middle of the plate. He had to hit that one then.
Yeah, another question this one probably bothered me more than anything else is when Holt asked him about the whole birther issue. It's like, who cares about that? Right. I mean, what's the importance about that? For this election cycle, there are a lot of questions that he could have asked. And he goes on this.
And stays on it.
And stayed on it, right. I mean, he kept pressing, and he pressed, and he pressed.
And it's like inside of our circle, the Beltway, people worry about when you swore off birtherism. The other thing is, I would make them explain to me the connection between birtherism and racism, because I don't see it. Okay, one of them is you're trying to delegitimize a politician for, the rules say you have to be born in the United States or a child of an American or whatever, however it's written, right? Okay, he's just trying to say you didn't qualify by that. It has nothing to do with race, right? It doesn't matter if he was Kenya, Australia, Kuala Lumpur. He's just saying you weren't born in the United States, right? So the people, they ride that into being racist. It's not racist. That is a total, and the media abets that because it helps their candidate.
All right, one more thing then before we move on to a couple other topics. What about the racism issue? I mean, I was kind of stunned, when Hillary got up there and talked about kind of we all have this implicit bias type of thing. So I thought, is she saying that everybody in the country is, just really racist at their core?
We're all deplorable.
We're all deplorable. Okay.
It's expanded from 25% to 100% in a week. We're getting better. We're getting worse. America is going, but you don't have to make it great again because it's already great, even though we're all deplorable racists. So, I didn't see where she was going there, and I think her advisors are telling her, don't touch that one again.
Yeah, that was probably not a great thing. And maybe one more little thing in there, which was the whole, I'm not sure that Trump did himself any favors on this, which was really kind of the stamina question and things like that, and she came back with her travel and all of that stuff.
She withstood. That's another one. She withstood an 11-hour hearing. Okay, why did you have an 11-hour hearing? Because you were caught lying.
Right. Yeah, and we can say at least I guess to some people they can say, well, look, she didn't faint or fall asleep during this debate, so she's probably okay. Except I saw this morning there was an AP called GFK poll that said that there was a large percentage of people, like 40-50% or something like that, I don't know, that are concerned about Hillary's health. But the numbers are almost the opposite. They're fully confident in Trump's health. Yeah. So this was an interesting question.
Wendy's,
baby. this was interesting to see that that question's being asked and people are saying, yeah, I am a little bit concerned. Yeah. And that her campaign should be concerned that they're concerned.
That's right. Because there's a widespread thing that she's not healthy enough, and that there's a big danger that if you elect her, you're going to have an invalid president. And, it'll be run by our coterie of advisors. And, what we've seen of her advisors, they all need immunity, right? So the other thing that I thought he completely knocked out of the park was trade. I'm a free trader. But, her explanation of that is Washington Insider. His is real world, real problems Americans are facing. And I think he was way more effective than her on that. That was part of the one that was worked the best.
Yeah, she had a hard time dealing with that whole thing about the whole trade issue and all that kind of stuff. We were just he had her dead to rights on that whole trade issue. There's just no doubt about it, and everything. Okay, so just relating to the whole thing also was the Howard Dean tweet about Trump sniffling. Was that a cocaine use kind of a thing? Which even Morning Joe found to be outrageous.
Yeah. Howard D will not be out crazied. He's just not going to get to the crazy side of him. He refuses to cede that ground. You know what? I also hear people saying that she drinks too much, and I will say this to that. I used to have to follow Tom Davis around, just a congressman, and from the local district, which kind of made it a little more busy because if you're from Kansas, you can't be going to Kansas on Tuesday night to 4 events. But you're in Northern Virginia, you can be at 4 events on Tuesday night. And it was exhausting. And Tom Davis's life is exhausting. And he was one congressman. And so if these guys are keeping this schedule, they're not doing a whole lot of drugs and drinking. They are living pretty straightforward. He supposedly doesn't drink, at all. So I don't. I don't buy any of that, either side.
Speaking of Tom Davis, did he not endorse Hillary?
Did he?
I believe he did.
No.
I don't even want to be tied to Tom Davis anymore. Sorry to throw that out at you. I'm pretty sure I saw that because it was him.
Warner.
Right, Warner did it, but also Davis's name came up because of Jim Moran, and so the two of them, and then as far as Warner, frankly, kind of forget the guys around. I think he's about as old as Methuselah here. So,
he's a wing of the party that's afraid of change, and change is it's a change election. So, this is a status quo establishment versus change, hoi polloi election. It's not really Democrat and Republican anymore, and so you're getting new coalitions, and you're going to see people on odd sides of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we get to our last couple minutes here, let's talk about this Gallup poll that came out a couple weeks ago or a week and a half ago about trust in the media hitting an all-time low. I know this is something that you want to discuss. I'll let you start this.
they, the old thing, you wrestle with a pig, you both get muddy, but the pig enjoys it. Okay, this has been
this is what I get for having a guy from the South.
You don't talk about wrestling pigs up here a lot.
Yeah, wrestle.
But but the point is, they've tried to wrestle with Trump, and so he's kind of extreme. Now they've become extreme. If you read the Post today, there are 15 stories in there about how she wiped the floor with him, and he's terrible, dangerous. It's a campaign organ of her. Okay, this is a brand, the Washington Post, that took 100 years to build, that brought down a president over a third-rate burglary he did not know occurred, right, through investigative reporting and so forth. I mean, one of the most respected newspapers ever in America, up to the last year. But in the last year, they're no more credible on this race than, the Conservative Tribune or townhall.com or anyone else. Everybody has a side, and you're arguing for your side. Okay, that's not what newspapers do. That's not what they're supposed to do. And so, the one mistake they've made is they've not hired a single person who takes his candidacy seriously, right? It's all just derision, snark and so forth. And people are like, okay, I'm looking at it, I'm not seeing that. That's not my judgment.
Okay, yeah, that's all very true. And just for the statistical part of it, the thing about this trust, this all-time low. So it's now at 32%. That was down from 40% last year. And when you go back to 1997, it was 53%. 1999 was 55%. So this has been a very steep drop-off in this, and just the way the media is treating not just Trump but others, other conservatives, has led this. I mean, the Republicans definitely have a very low opinion. The Democrats are still in that 50% range, because those are their buddies, and everything like that. But the way they're covering stories. But you are so right. Newspapers were not meant to, there's an editorial side and a news side. The editorial side, we expect opinion, but that has just bled all the way over into the news side, where you just see these reports, and and not that I have any respect or any admiration for, say, Morning Joe, but boy, this morning they were really kind of, Mika Brzezinski was going off the rails. She had a real problem today, and she just about totally lost it this morning. It's a video worth watching if you haven't seen it. But go ahead.
One thing on that is it's digital. We're going digital. So like the beauty queen that came up in the debate, Trump said these awful things about her. Well, the next day, she went from 110 to 170 in 3 weeks. Okay, or 3 months, whatever it was, right? And your job is, you have a 1-year contract to go around being beautiful, which should set you up for the rest of your life, right? You should meet enough people to get enough opportunities. That's a ticket to the upper class if you win the Miss Universe pageant, okay? And so he was right. It's one of those things. They all protested, but he was right.
All right, so I'll give you about 60 seconds so we can wrap this up.
Ed Meese joining the Trump transition team. When I went to Heritage, I got on all the little working groups that Ed Meese did, just to see how he is in a meeting, just to see how he operates. And he's an incredible guy. And he's been working on, you see the Black Lives Matter people now talking about they invented overcriminalization. We were working on that in 2001 with Ed Meese. Okay, he is that far ahead and has always been a big, fair thinker. And the fact that he's joining in this is a signal, as was Fulner, that this is who the conservatives are with.
Right. And so my little tribute here will actually be to my father. Tomorrow would have been his 94th birthday. So, but he's been gone for 12 years. But what I want to say about him is just what a great man he was, to not only have the courage to found an organization like Accuracy in Media, but also just to have the courage to go out there and fight the fight back in the late 60s. Very few conservative organizations existed back then. We've lost a lot of those conservative icons, and Phyllis Schlafly lately. We just lost Reed Larson, but he's part of that group. And but a lot of young conservatives don't realize who the real pioneers were for the conservative movement.
Yeah, he had an idea that no one had ever had before, which was to take on the fairness of this. No one had ever even organized to do that before. So, yeah, I agree with you.
All right, we're out of time, so we'll see you next week on the Bias Buzz.
Bullseye.